We're talking Giants with Big Blue Views, Ed Valentine, plus an update on how close we are to getting the mysterious box open. That's coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. Patricia Traina here with you, and this episode is brought to you in part today by Get Upside. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code TOUCHDOWN to get 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank at participating gas stations. Happy to have everybody with us today. Thank you as always for making us your first listen of the day or your first watch if watching us on YouTube. And we're going to kick off this week's show with a sit down we did with Ed Valentine at Big Blue View. Eddie joined me on the podcast. For those of you who are new to the show, Ed and I used to host the Locked On Giants podcast together years ago. Before that, we had our own podcast, so we're all buddies. So we're going to talk all things Giants on today's show. And also a quick update on where we are with the mysterious box. So that's all coming up. But regarding the box, I've been telling you guys, if you caught the show last week, I said to you, once I hit 2,000 subscribers, we would open up this box, which is my gift/incentive from Locked On if I hit 2,000 subscribers. Well, folks, I hit 2,000 subscribers over the weekend. So first, let me just say thank you to everybody who subscribed, who made that possible. Last I checked, I think I was at 2,080 subscribers or thereabouts. So thank you for that. Now, I'm not going to open the box on today's show. I know. I said I would do it when I hit 2,000, but because of the interview with Eddie Valentine, I'm going to actually open the box on tomorrow's show. Tomorrow's show being Twitter Tuesday. So you know what to do. Got to get those questions into me for Twitter Tuesday, and then I will open the box and we'll look at it together. And I think I might even have an announcement regarding that. So you will not want to miss tomorrow's show. If you want to get in on Twitter Tuesday, you can tweet at me. My Twitter handle is below. Make sure you tag the post Ask P Train. If you want to email the questions to me, it's lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. So let's hear from you. We'll do Twitter Tuesday and we will open the box and see what is in it. And again, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button, smash that little bell, that like button, and get that, like I said, hit that little bell for notifications, because I think the next incentive I get from Locked On is going to be at 5,000. It's going to be 5,000 subscribers. So got a long way to go, but thanks to you guys and gals, I'm confident I'll get there. So, all right, let's start the interview with Ed Valentine, who I'm going to be on Eddie's program on Monday. So if you want to see what I had to say on his show, check out Big Blue View Radio. So without further ado, let's kick this off. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. Patricia Traina here with you, and as promised, I have Ed Valentine of Big Blue View, and we're going to talk all things Giants. There's a lot to talk about, Edward. First off, thank you so much for making me part of your Sunday morning. We're taping this on a Sunday morning for our Monday shows, and I, of course, will be on Ed's show. I think it's going to run on Monday or whatnot, but Ed, thank you for coming on with me.
Oh, you're welcome, Patty. Thanks for having me. You're just keeping me from trying to chop the ice out of my driveway this morning. So
yeah, you got hit pretty hard by the storm, huh?
Yeah, we did. My driveway and my sidewalk are about 5 inches of solid ice. So
wow.
That'll be fun. Mm-hmm.
Wow. We got barely nothing down where I live, but just luck, I guess. But anyway, Edward, we got a lot to talk about. A lot of stuff going on with the Giants. We're in the the first couple weeks or so of the Joe Shane era, but already, he's gone down into the Senior Bowl. We've read about, what he's doing with the scouts, the coaching search, everything like that. It's early, I get it, and it doesn't matter unless they win games. But thus far, Ed, what are your impressions of Joe Shane?
Well, I'm impressed so far, Patty, but like you said, it's 2 weeks and we don't know, but I'm impressed by a couple of things. I've been impressed by his willingness to not like walk in the door and sweep everything out without really considering, without really looking at people, without really saying, okay, let me look at these people and see who I can work with and who I can't work with. I've been impressed by that. I mean, now is not a good time to just blow up the front office and the scouting staff anyway, because of with the draft coming up, with free agency coming up, so much of that work's already been done. But he's expressed a willingness to see what people can do, to work with the existing system that the Giants have been working with, at least for now. And I've also been impressed by some of the people that have been brought into the organization to this point. So to me, it's a good start.
Yeah, they just brought in Brandon Brown. That was reported. The Giants haven't confirmed it, but Brandon Brown coming from the Eagles. And I don't know about you, Ed, but I'm seeing a trend here with some of the decisions and the way Shane is approaching stuff. Number one, Buffalo's been a successful organization under Brandon Beane and Shane, who were there together, Batman and Robin, for 5 years. Brandon Brown coming from the Eagles. And yes, I know Giant fans are probably cringing a little bit. How dare we take somebody from the Eagles? But the Eagles have done a pretty decent job with finding personnel over the years. They've had some misses, just like every other team on the face of the planet, but they've done some good things there. And Howie Roseman, I think, runs a pretty good program as far as developing people who go on to become GMs or assistant GMs or directors of player personnel and whatnot.
Yeah, I've been impressed by, you bring in Brandon Brown, who's a rising star from an organization that has done some good things. You bring in Mike Kafka to the coaching staff, who's learned offense at the feet of Andy Reid for the last few years. Another guy who's considered a rising star in the coaching profession. So the Giants are going to winning organizations at this point for some young rising talent. We don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, I wrote this morning at Big Blue View that as we all praise all of these hirings and the things that have gone on, we have to remember Ben McAdoo was a rising star in the coaching profession when the Giants made him head coach. James Betcher was a rising star in the coaching profession when the Giants made him defensive coordinator. Joe Judge was a rising star when the Giants made him head coach. Those things didn't work out, but it's still a good start. It still feels like a step in the right direction.
And it's different, because the Giants, and we used to talk about this with Joe Judge. We used to say, look, if he doesn't expand his horizons and learn different ways of doing things, he's going to collapse in himself. Well, the Giants, I think we can say, collapsed within themselves because they kept doing things, the only way they knew how to do for a number of years. And it just, after a while, it wasn't working anymore. That I guess the rest of the league caught up with them or passed them by, whatever you want to say. And now they're going outside for different methods, different voices, different philosophies. And really, that's not a bad thing at the end of the day.
No, it's not, because the Giants people have talked about it for a long time now, saying that the Giants were stuck in the Giants way, that the way that used to work, promoting from within, still thinking in a lot of ways in the George Young 1980s philosophy 35 years later. And you have to adapt with the times. And like I said, I've been impressed with the willingness to go outside the organization. I've been impressed with Schoen's willingness to look at people so far. And I think it's a good start. Of course, we still don't have a coaching staff in place. and a game hasn't been played yet. So we have to temper all of it, but I do think they're off to a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And time will tell. And I agree with you that, the fact that Joe Shane hasn't come in with the big broom and started firing people left and right, it's a process. And look, a lot of people say, oh, can the Giants be the next Cincinnati Bengals, go from being at the bottom of the barrel to, a Super Bowl contender? I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but, if everything falls into place, we're definitely going to see some improvement. And I think you and I are going to have to learn how to write more about winning, games that result in wins. I know it's a foreign concept of late.
I don't remember. I don't remember how to do that, Patty.
I don't remember how to do it either, but we'll have to practice.
We keep having meetings here with the editors of some of the other football sites at SB Nation, and we keep talking about playoffs. And I keep asking why I have to go to those meetings.
Well, you know what, Ed? Not counting this because there's no football this weekend. I don't count the Pro Bowl, which is supposed to be played Sunday, but who cares? But the Super Bowl. So if you want to practice writing about a winning team, pick the winner of the Super Bowl and get some practice. I think that's what I'm going to do, just to make sure I haven't forgotten how to do that. But
yeah, there you go. There you go. We're right about that a little bit.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked on Giants podcast. But first, if you're aiming to eat healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein, making it an easy item to include in any of your diet plans that you happen to be on. So head on over to BuiltBar.com. Use our special promo code LOCK15 to save 15% off your first order and start stocking up today. Again, that's code LOCK15, LOCKED15 for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. Edward, I want to ask you about the coaching staff now. Brian Daboll, you were there for his introductory presser. Let me get your impressions of him first off.
I think he's a very humble, down to earth guy. I think there's not a lot of ego. There's not a lot of bluster. There's not a lot of chest thumping, and I liked that. I think we've seen with a couple of the coaches that the Giants have hired, and I'm thinking about Ben McAdoo, and in a way, as much as I liked Joe Judge, I'm thinking about Joe Judge as well. I think they came in sort of pounding their chests and thinking that they had the answers. And Brian Daboll doesn't seem to be that way. He seems to be coming in, and he basically, he rolled up in his pickup truck, and he's like, let's just get to work and see what we can get done here. And that was kind of refreshing for me.
Yeah. The fact that, he came in, and you mentioned Joe Judge, when he spoke at his introductory presser, he sounded like he had a plan. He was ready to hit it. And, the thing with planning is the best laid plans can go down the toilet. I mean, you can plan to do something and then an unexpected twist gets thrown into your day or your year or whatever, and now you have to adapt. And I don't know. And look, I like Joe. Let me make that clear. I have nothing against Joe. I thought he was a really good guy. I still think he could be a good football coach, but where he came up short for me is I'm not so sure he adapted when things happen. In other words, he just, instead of saying, okay, this is not working this way, let's try a different way, he just kept at it until circumstances really forced his hand. And that you have to be flexible. You have to adapt as a head coach because you just never know what's around the corner.
One of the differences that I see here, Patty, is, and again, we have to wait and see what happens when the games start and all of that. But one of the differences that I see is you have to look at the resumes of the two men. Joe came from New England. He came from Alabama. He came from the Saban-Belichick tree. Find failure anywhere on Joe Judge's resume. Okay. I can't until he came to New York. He had never really and truly dealt with it because even when he was asked about dealing with failure, he referenced a year that New England won the Super Bowl. And he referenced talking about feeling like the assistant coaches were all going to be fired at midseason. And I went and looked it up, and New England was 7-2 at that point in time. So Joe, as a coach, had never dealt with the kind of failure, the kind of adversity that the Giants went through in the last couple of years, and I think that's problematic. Brian Daboll has the Saban Belichick training, but Brian Daboll has also been a number of other places. Brian Daboll was in Cleveland when they were bad. Brian Daboll has been through, through a couple of other. He started in Buffalo when Buffalo wasn't the juggernaut that we see now. He's been with some other head coaches in some other places, and I think that varied background gives me some reason for optimism.
Yeah, that's a point I know I have in my column as well, and a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because look, when Joe Judge said that, I said to myself, when have you ever been part of a failing organization? I couldn't remember it, and I couldn't find it, and I was like, right. What are you talking about? That's like, a Pulitzer Prize winning author saying, well, I only sold 1 million copies of books as opposed to 1.5 million or something like that. It's like most authors would be happy to sell 1 million, Yep. So good point there. Let me ask you though about the offense, because, what I found kind of interesting here is it seems to me the Giants are looking to build around Daniel Jones, because John Mara, God bless him, he finally came out and said what I've been screaming about for years. The Giants have been screwing Daniel Jones every which way but center, with not putting a good offensive line in front of him, without giving him decent receivers until recently, the inconsistencies and the instability at coaching. They've admitted that they've screwed this kid up, and this kid just keeps coming back and working and trying to prove that he is worthy of being this team's franchise quarterback. So now they bring in Brian Daboll, who of course worked wonders with Josh Allen, came up with a system that fit Allen. They bring in Mike Kafka, who worked with Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I think, is primarily a West Coast offense type, or at least he's rooted in the West Coast offense. So when you think about this offensive, the potential of an offensive system, how do you see it kind of shaping out? How do you see it blending together? Because Daboll and what they ran in the Bills and what Reid and Bieniemy and Kafka ran in the with the Chiefs is a little different. So how do you see this kind of merging together?
I'm not exactly sure, Patty, but I am sure interested to find out. I think that I'm thrilled by the fact that what you have here in Daboll, in Kafka, you have a couple of guys who are really good offensive minds. They're current. They've had recent success. I mean, Kafka's been part of what's going on in Kansas City. Obviously, you're not going to be able to turn Daniel Jones into Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to be able to turn him into Josh Allen. What you want to do is turn him into the best version of Daniel Jones that he can be. And the Giants have not done Daniel Jones any favors. I don't know that Daniel Jones can be a top 10, top 12 kind of quarterback. I think he can be better than what we've seen. I think that Daboll has promised to figure out what Daniel Jones can do, what he likes. He talked at his introductory press conference about even asking Jones to go back to Duke to find some concepts that he likes. And again, that's another thing that I like about Daboll is that he's coached a lot of different types of quarterbacks. He's been an offensive coordinator 4 times. He's done it different ways. I don't think there is a Brian Daboll system. It's not, this is what we run. This is how we do it. I don't think that exists in Kansas City either. And that's what makes me optimistic, is that I think that this will evolve over time. Now, I think it's a short window for Daniel Jones. Let's be honest. It's a really short window for Daniel because he's in the 4th year of his rookie contract. I'd be shocked if the Giants pick up that 5th-year option. It's a really short window for him to prove that he can be the guy going forward. But I think this gives him an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you on the 5th-year option. It makes no sense to do it, to be honest with you, having looked at it. And it is a short window. And the big thing with Daniel, obviously, is also going to be staying healthy. Now I've had David Turner on my show during the season. I know you've had him on your show a couple times, and David always used to say, why are you having your quarterback run the ball when you have running backs? It made no sense. I mean, it's a part of Daniel's game. Daniel can execute design runs, but the whole thing with Daniel has been his refusal to slide feet first and protect himself, as well as to know when to give up on a play and live to see another down. So, I mean, that's probably going to be a challenge for him. But you know what? I do like, you mentioned the point that Dable asked Jones to, hey, come up with a list of things you like to do, going back to your days at Duke. And, hopefully that results in a more, a better fitting offensive system. Because right now, what they have asked Daniel to do, I mean, Shermer, I think, came closest with his system, but since then they haven't come close to fitting what this kid can do really well. And how are you supposed to make a decision on him if you don't know?
I think that what we know about Daniel Jones, to me, I think what we know what his character is, we know what his intelligence is, we know what his work level is, we know that he has a tremendous amount of physical skill. He doesn't have Josh Allen's size and strength to run through people, but he does have some speed, and he's not a small guy, and he can do some things with his legs. He doesn't have Josh Allen's, howitzer of an arm, or Patrick Mahomes' ability to make crazy off platform throws, but he does have the ability to make all of the NFL throws. I think we've seen that over the years. So there's reason to be optimistic with Daniel. We'll have to see where it goes. I'm interested to see how much they run him as well, because Daboll comes from a system where you could run Josh Allen, who's 245 or 250 pounds, and you could run power with him. You can't do that with Daniel Jones. You just can't, because he'll be in street clothes most of the year if you try to do that. You have to be very careful. And it's an interesting blend, because Kansas City never uses Patrick Mahomes as a designed runner. So we'll see how the Giants incorporate that. But to me, you can't take that away from Daniel, but you have to be careful about how you do it and when you do it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one more thing, excuse me, one more thing about the offense, and then just real quick, we'll touch on the defense before we wrap it up. When you look at the state of the rest of the offensive line, we all know has to be fixed up. How much of a concern do you have about that unit? Because, look, you still got to bring these guys in. You got to let them gel. You've got a new offensive line coach. Bobby Johnson's been reported to be the new offensive line coach. But the gelling process does take time. And really, those guys aren't going to gel, I think, until they start playing games, in the preseason. Are you concerned that might take a while to settle in, and therefore get the offense off to a slow start? Or are you just at a point where, hey, everybody's starting over anyhow, it doesn't really matter?
Well, of course you have to be concerned at this point, Patty, because we have no idea who the people are going to be. I think you have come to the same conclusion that I've come to. The Giants have one offensive lineman they can comfortably go forward with. That's Andrew Thomas at left tackle. Other than that, it's an open book. I mean, a couple of the guys that on the current roster might be back, but I wouldn't count on any of that. I think that what gives me hope is that Brian Daboll and Bobby Johnson did this in Buffalo. Okay, they did this in Buffalo, where they They came in, and I think in Daboll's first year, they had 4 brand new starters on the offensive line in Buffalo, and they were successful. So they did it. Mike Kafka was in a situation in Kansas City this past year where they completely overhauled the offensive line, 2 rookie starters inside, and they were successful with it. So what gives me hope is that the people that the Giants have in place have done this before. Now, does that mean they can do it again? Does that mean they'll be 100% successful and the offensive line is going to be fixed when we get to September? We can't say that, but it gives me, but just the people that the Giants have put in place and the fact that they've done this before, they've been through this exact experience, gives me some hope that at least some steps forward will be taken.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, because if they don't get this offensive line fixed, then
Patty, it doesn't matter who the running backs are. It doesn't.
Yes.
We know that the Giants have to rebuild the tight end position. We know that despite all the resources they put into receiver last year, we know some of those guys aren't going to be back, and they could use at least a mid-round pick at receiver. Mm-hmm. We know all of that. And we said this a year ago. None of it's going to matter unless they get the offensive line right.
Right.
They're going to get Daniel Jones broken again. They're not going to be able to function unless they make progress there. Yeah. So that, forget the scheme, forget the weapons, forget the running back, get the offensive line right and go from there. Because if you have a good offensive line and even, quote unquote, mediocre weapons around him, you can function as an offense, but you've got to get that line right. Like I said, we've seen it done. It's not easy to do. Not everybody that tries it is successful at it, but at rebuilding an entire offensive line in one off season, I mean, Dave Gettleman had a reputation for really knowing offensive line play and couldn't get it done in 4 years. So we'll see what happens, but I do feel optimistic simply because of the people that are in place.
All right, Giant fans, still more to come on today's program. But first, the Get Upside app, which you can download for free from Google Play or the App Store, offers savings every time you fill up at the pump at participating gas stations. Sign up today for your free account and use our special promo code Touchdown to get at least 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up at participating gas stations. Again, you can cash out anytime you want to your bank account, PayPal, or get an e-gift card to Amazon and other brands. Again, that code is Touchdown, and that app is Get Upside. It's a free app. Download it today and start saving every time you fill up at the pump. All right, I got to ask you about the defense now. Obviously, the big news over the weekend, Patrick Graham decided to take a job with Josh McDaniels out in Las Vegas. He will be the defensive coordinator out there. Now, I didn't see if Graham is going to be the assistant head coach, defensive coordinator. I'm not sure exactly what his title is. Were you surprised that Patrick Graham took that job?
Patty, initially, yes, because I think I fell victim, like a lot of people did, to the simple assumption that because Patrick Graham didn't get the job in Minnesota, that he had a contract with the Giants, he knew Brian Daboll, and he would be back. But then you stop and you think about everything that's gone on with the Giants in the last couple of weeks. Joe Judge is Patrick Graham's best friend. Mm-hmm. Joe Judge got fired. All right. Brian Flores is another one of Patrick Graham's really good friends. Patrick Graham worked for Brian Flores. Flores graciously allowed Patrick Graham to leave Miami to come to New York. And now Brian Flores is suing the Giants over the whole Rooney Rule violations and the hiring practices and all of that. And I don't want to get into a Flores discussion. But Patrick Graham also interviewed for that head coaching job and he didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got Joe Judge gone. You've got another one of his friends suing the organization. You've got the fact that he didn't get the job and Brian Daboll did. And Patrick Graham, as much as he said many, many times, and you heard him say this many, many times over the last couple of years, how much he loved the Giants organization, how much he appreciated it, how it was a dream job for him. I have to imagine that he's been sitting there the last few days thinking, this really is not a dream job anymore. This is not comfortable. This is not, this is not what I signed up for, because a lot of things have happened here in the last few days that just don't make this, something that I feel good about anymore. And then Josh McDaniels, another guy that Graham has history with, came along and offered him a job on a better team that just won 10 games, made the playoffs. And what I wrote this morning was, I'd have taken that job too. Mm-hmm. That's better for my career, because I walk into a good team with something that's already built. And that might help further my own aspirations to become a head coach.
Yeah, I wrote the same thing, to be honest with you. I was like, because somebody said to me on Twitter, well, what happened to Patrick Graham? He said this was his dream job, so much for his words. I said, well, back then it was his dream job for the reasons you cited. Joe Judge was there, his best friend. There was no strife surrounding the organization. Now you look at what's gone on, and I totally get it. I mean, am I disappointed that Graham's not back? Yes. I mean, did I fall victim to, he didn't get the job in Minnesota, so he's going to come back because any move would be lateral? Yes. But I thought the decision to jump to Las Vegas spoke volumes about maybe what's going through Patrick Graham's mind.
Well, I also think, to be honest with you, when it comes to Graham, he went through a 9-hour interview on Tuesday in Minnesota. And obviously I wasn't in the room, but I'm guessing that the way that interview went, I'm guessing Patrick Graham came out of that interview thinking, you know what? I can get one of these jobs eventually. I feel like I'm there, I'm ready, and I can earn one of these jobs. And let's be honest, more than likely, as much as we all want the Giants to get better and get better quickly, this is going to be a process. It's going to take time. Patrick Graham has been part of, although he's done a good job personally and his defenses haven't been responsible for it, between Miami and New York, he's been part of 3 bad football teams in the last 3 years. That's maybe not a good thing to put on a resume when you're going and trying to become a head coach. So I don't blame him at all. Like I said, I just think that it's a good career move, and I think that New York had become uncomfortable for him.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So now with that said, Brian Daboll, as we record the show here, interviewing several guys for the defensive coordinator position, guys with different philosophies and backgrounds, I might add. They don't all share the same philosophy. Who intrigues you most of the candidates that have been reportedly linked to the position?
Well, the guy who intrigues me is Sean Desai, the guy from Chicago. I don't know how good of a coordinator he actually is. He only had 1 year in Chicago. He was with Chicago for 7 or 8 years before he got that opportunity. But he's the young guy. He's 38 years old. All of the other candidates are older guys that have been around the block, that are really good defensive coordinators. And that's the one thing I think you have to say here. It's a good list. Wink Martindale, Jim Schwartz, Vic Fangio's on that list of possibilities. Terrell Austin has been a quality defensive coordinator in the league for a while. So it's a list of quality people. The one that really intrigues me, probably because he's the one I know the least about, and because he's a young guy and could be considered one of those rising stars. And I'm not even sure that he he was a coach when he initially, started with the Bears. If he was a really low level guy on the coaching tree there, but he intrigues me, I think, just because of his rise.
Yeah. Now, of course, if the one thing they all have in common. By the way, I think I've seen where maybe Jerome Henderson, the defensive backs coach, might get an interview, but I couldn't find any defensive coordinator background in Henderson or prior positions in Henderson's background. But the thing there that these guys all have in common is they all did call plays. And you kind of get the impression that Brian Dable wants somebody who has been there, done that, because look, the offense, we can all agree, needs to be rebuilt. It needs a lot of love and attention here. The defense, if you get somebody who knows what he's doing, who can kind of self-manage himself and doesn't need as much intervention from the head coach, I think ideally that's probably what you want. I mean, would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Patty. I think that Brian Dable started his career for a couple of years as a low-level defensive assistant in the NFL, but Brian Dable is an offensive head coach. All right. He's an offensive head coach. He's been an offensive coach for 20 years now. He's been an offensive coordinator 4 times. That's his expertise. He doesn't want to have to hunker down and get into the nitty-gritty of a defense. And also, it has to help him if he can simply turn the defense over to someone. Obviously, there are characteristics and things that he'll want, but if he can focus on the offense and focus on helping Mike Kafka, who's going to be, if he's allowed to call plays, he'll be a first-time play caller. Dable's a first-time head coach. We know Joe Shane wants Brian Dable to manage games and not to call plays if possible. And I think, having a guy, as you said, who's been there, done that on the defensive side of the ball would be a huge thing.
Yeah. Final question for you, Ed. You mentioned the play calling, and I want to go back to that. How do you think that is going to play out?
Oh, Patty, I think it's going to be really, really hard for Brian Dable to give up that play calling. I had the impression when we got a chance to talk to him that he really in his heart didn't want to. He doesn't want to give it up. But the flip side of that is, I honestly, Mike Kafka has had interviews for head coaching jobs over the last couple of years. He's a guy that, Pete Sweeney from SB Nation's Arrowhead Pride site told me he's kind of been the offensive coordinator in waiting in Kansas City. And unfortunately, Eric Bieniemy hasn't been able to get a head coaching job. My gut instinct tells me, and the Giants are going to play this coy. They're not going to give us a direct answer for a while. But my gut instinct tells me that Mike Kafka wasn't coming to New York to work for a coach he didn't know unless he was told that he would get to call plays.
Makes sense, because they didn't have a prior connection, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So.
They don't have a prior connection. So I don't think Mike Kafka was going to come to the Giants unless he was told that your bottom line would be that the offensive play calling would be his responsibility.
You sure hope that is the case, because I know you're a big fan of the CEO style head coach. I know I am. But, there are some guys that just find it hard to give it up. I mean, Ben McAdoo couldn't give it up. Pat Shurmur couldn't give it up, and
it works, Patty. It works for some guys.
Sure. Andy Reid, it works for.
It works for Andy Reid. It works for Sean McVay. Mm-hmm. It might work for Brian Dable, but it's not my favorite approach because I don't like to see shots on the sideline when there's something critical going on with special teams or with the defense or even with the offense. There's a situation that a head coach might need to address. I hate looking over there when something's going on and the head coach has his face stuck in a play card.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I hate that because to me, that's not the job. To me, the job is to coach the team not to call the next play.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And
And we saw that a lot with McAdoo.
we saw that a lot with McAdoo, and we saw it at times with Pat Shurmur. And you know, so I'm a fan of the head coach trusting his offensive coordinator and his defensive coordinator. I mean, you lean into the headset and you say, hey, let's go heavy on this series. You know, this might be a good time to pull a trick out of the bag. You know, you have influence that way. You veto something if you hear it in the headset and you don't like it. But to me, I don't like the head coach with his face in the play card the entire game.
Totally with you on that, Ed. Well, we still have a lot of questions to have answered. You know, as you mentioned, the coaching staff is still being assembled, so it's going to be an interesting few weeks coming up. I'm sure later on this month, we're going to find out some of the cuts that are going to have to be made to get this team under the salary cap. So, Edward, want to thank you for coming on. Great stuff as always. I know you've got 5 inches of ice you need to go and address. So everybody make sure you check out Ed's work over at Big Blue View. And also I'm going to be on Ed's podcast as well. I think it's running tomorrow or Monday, I should say. Right, Ed?
Yes, on Monday, Patty.
So check them out. And folks, don't forget here on the Locked On Giants podcast, we are not only doing Twitter Tuesday tomorrow, but because I hit 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, you know what that means. We're going to open the box and find out what's in it. Exciting times. So make sure you
Patty gets swag?
I get swag. I get swag. I told subscribers, I got a lollipop from the Locked On Network when I hit 1,000. I got this mystery box, which I'm pretty sure I know what's in it, but when I got the instructions, do not open until you hit 2,000 subscribers on YouTube. Well, I'm over 2,000 subscribers. I hit that over the weekend. But because we did this show, I want to save this for Twitter Tuesday because that's one of my popular shows. So, folks, we will find out what's in the box.
I have to tell you, Patty, your viewers should be happy because I got this nice fancy new microphone from SB Nation so that you guys can see my pretty face now.
I know, but I just hope we don't lose viewers now because of it.
Patty, your appearance on my show is.
We can do this, folks. Folks, we could do this. Ed and I go back so many years. It's like who once made the comment that we were like an old married football couple? Was it you that made that once? Because we used to host. For those who don't know, Ed and I used to be co-hosts on this podcast, and before that, we had our own podcasts. So we used to pick on each other all the time.
I don't know who made that comment, Patty.
I think you did actually.
Probably, but I think it still applies.
Yeah, it still does. I bust on you more than I bust on my own husband. Go figure.
I don't know. You have to live with him. So
that's true. I only have to see you a couple times a week. So
that's right. That's right.
All right, Eddie, I'll let you get to that 5 inches of ice and whatever else you got planned. Folks, check him out, Big Blue View, Big Blue View Radio. He's on Twitter at Big Blue View and also at Ed. I think is it at Ed _Valentine?
Valentine _Ed.
Okay.
Other way around.
All right. All right, folks. We'll catch you tomorrow for Twitter Tuesday for Ed Valentine. I am Patricia Traina. Have a great one, everybody.